Linh-chan and Dimi-chan play games. Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back, Chan-chan.
Today we're continuing Pikmin, and we're gonna explore the forest Navel some more, right?
Yay!
So, before we get started, I want to share a quick story about how I almost barfed watching a YouTube video. So this person bought some magical girl Japanese curry. It was blue, and it was purple, and it had nothing like the curry consistency. And I needed to find out what happened next, but I was like, you know that gag reflex that you immediately get when you look at something disgusting?
Or when you see someone else doing it?
Yeah, so I was getting that constantly. It was gross. Well, anyways.
Anyway, it was fun. I was laughing.
It was disgusting. I don't know how anyone could, like, willfully eat something like that. Like, I remember in college there were, like, drinking games where people put stuff in, like, one cup and then the loser has to drink that.
Oh, yeah.
I do not subject myself to that kind of torture.
It's King's Cup or Queen's Cup. And then, like, you know, you take turn pouring whatever beverage of your preference into that one cup or, you know. And then the loser in the end has to drink it. So, like, in the end, you'll have, like, beer, you have vodka, you have milk in there, you have water in there.
No, there's no point. There is no point at all. There's no reason anyone should feel the need to subject themselves to that torture.
But by then, everyone's already drunk, so it's okay. You wouldn't even know what you're drinking at that point.
I guess. I don't know. I'm just of a different mentality, perhaps. Like, I don't feel the need to, like, drink in order to have fun. I guess it's different for everyone, but, like, that's not for me. Especially torture. Hey, where are you guys going? So, Lynn's been telling me a lot of very interesting and very bizarre stuff about China. So, we thought that might be an interesting topic to talk about today.
Well, they're not very... I mean, all of these things I've been talking about have been old news, but it's just I've been really curious about them, so I started to look them up and, you know, do a little research.
Yeah, it's not necessarily anything new. It's just stuff that lots of people don't necessarily know.
Yeah. So what made me started looking at these things was because I love kids. You know, I took care of my cousins ever since I was, like, in middle school. So I love kids in general. So, and, like, we were just talking about, like, in the future when we do have kids, like, I would like a chance to maybe look into adoption and stuff like that. And so, and then that probed another questions. Like, I know a lot of people would travel outside of the United States to adopt. And mostly from, like, Asia, like, China is a big, it's a country where the majority of the adoption comes from China. So then that just probed the question, like, why would you go elsewhere to a different country when there are so many orphans here in America that are waiting to be adopted? So that's adopted. So that's a whole different story. That, you know, we can spend more time on discussing the difference between adoption here and elsewhere and outside of the United States. But that leads me to looking up as to why are people, you know, adopting from China. And the majority of the time, like, when people adopt from China, there's a lot of the time it's baby girls that are being adopted. You know, and that goes all the way back to China's one-child policy rule and as to why there are so many baby girls available to be adopted as opposed to boys, you know. And so I started looking up, like, how did this one-child policy from China affect their whole economy and just the dynamic of their country in general. So I found some really interesting facts. And, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people already know about the China's one-child policy.
Yeah, like,
it's old news.
I knew about it, but I didn't really know what it meant.
Yeah, it's old news. It's pretty much saying that, like, each family is limited down to just having one child in their lifetime. There's no way around it, you know? So then we're thinking, like, well, that's not fair. So I started doing research as to, like, how did the policy come about? Where did they even get that idea, you know? And where is it now? Like, So the policy started in 1949 under this this leader called Mao. So they call him Chairman Mao.
Mhm.
So it was under his leadership that he thinks, oh, a more populated more populated country, you know, more people will, you know, empower the country. So then he started encouraging like everyone to start populating more, you know.
Mhm.
So to the point where like it gone out of control. And in order to promote that kind of in order to like encourage people to populate more, the government started banning like contraceptives and stuff like that. So in a way, like making people not have a way out.
Everyone need to make lots of babies.
Exactly. So then it was really interesting that like just within 27 years, about the population has increased by 400 million people. You know.
That's a huge number.
That is a huge number just within 27 years. I mean, if you look at the population of the United States right now, as of today, the population, it's not even 400 million people. You know, but that, and it's taken us how many years to get to this point?
A very long time.
That is, you know, currently the population, it's 325 million right now, as of today. So then imagine that. And it's taken us thousands, but like hundreds of years to get to this point, right? But it only took China 27 years to get that much.
That's crazy.
That is crazy. So things are getting a little bit out of hand when it comes to like their population and stuff like that. So then around I think around 1979, there's one of this councilman. I don't know if it's one of this like government official. He took a trip to Europe, and then he came upon like some of these influential books that talk about like the limitations of populations and like the blueprints of survivals and stuff like that. So then he started thinking like, well, his country China has been like overly populated. So then he got together with a bunch of mathematicians and I don't know what they did, but somehow he came up with a number, and that number is what he thinks the population of China should be, and it's 700 million. So by that point, the population had already exceeded that amount, and it's around like 900 million at that point. So then he's like, okay. So then he went back to China, and he's like talked to all these officials. He's like, okay, we gotta like start limiting people from having too many babies, you know. So that's where the one child policy come from. It's because of this guy who randomly decides, oh, the 700 million is the number, you know. And then everyone just went along with it. Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting, just because one guy decided, oh, this should be it, you know.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's like, ever since then, it's had such a profound change on the economy too, right?
Yeah, definitely a lot. I mean, that's what I mean. China, like Asian culture, like China, Vietnam, they're very big on having like a boy, you know, over a girl, because goes back to the whole idea of like a boy, you know, having a male they'll carry down the bloodline, because when you have a girl, you tend to marry the girl out, you know, and the girl would take the husband's last name or whatever. But when you have a boy, the boy stays home, take care of the family, the household for generations, and then the girl gets married into the family, and she stays and take care of you, you know. So then they're very big on like, you know, status, like the male status, you know. So then that leads to the whole adoption thing in China, where a lot of baby girls at that point are being abandoned because of this one child policy rule, because people feel that, well, I can't have a girl because then she's never going to be able to stay at home, you know, take care of the rest of the people, you know, she's going to be married off, and then that's it. So then during that time, like the amount of children that are being abandoned or given up for adoption is just phenomenal, you know. So which is why a lot of people are actually adopting baby girls. And then like the time that you have to wait for, like, amount of time that you have to wait to adopt a baby girl as opposed to a baby boy, it's like 3 or 4 years difference. You know.
And like you were saying, what the difference between like nowadays women and men are in China?
Oh yeah. So they predicted, meaning the National Population and Family Planning Commission predicted that by the year 2020, there will be 30 million more men than women.
That is
China.
insane.
I mean, if you look at the population of California right now, the population of California is 39 million.
Of the whole state.
Of the whole California state. So if you compare that to like China, just within a few more years, you know, there's going to be 30 million more men than women. That's just ridiculous, you know?
Not to mention, like, the difference between men and women nowadays is larger than the difference than all of Los Angeles County.
Yeah.
Right? It's crazy.
I mean, I think the population of Los Angeles is roughly between like 18 to 20 million, you know? So it's not even anything close to what it is for men.
It's like a third of California.
Yeah.
And but you were also saying like the rules for who can have one child is different depending on where you live and what your circumstances are, right?
Right. So then, so if you break this rule, if you violate this policy, you get a fine, and the fine is, you know, and not everyone in China can afford it. Only the top 1%, like the rich, can afford it. So then they would constantly pop out kids, you know, because they don't care about how much money the fine is. But like in a lot of like rural area, like really small villages, they're more lenient on the policy when it comes to it. You know, in like small villages, like if you're from a small village and if you were an only child growing up, then you can have a chance to apply to have a second child. Or if you have, like, if you're the only child left and then you have like an elderly parents that are like sick, or you have family members that you need to take care of and you're the only one left, then you can apply to have a second child. What else? Yeah, or in general, like if you, and I think this applies to most areas. Like in general, if your first child happens to be born like with a sort of like an illness or a disability, or a medical condition of any sort, then you're exempt from that policy, and you can apply. And it's not a matter of just like, oh, I'm exempt and I just gonna go pop out a few more kids. Like, it's not that. There's a procedure that you have to follow. You have to wait between 3 to 4 years and then apply. And then once you apply, you have to get approved by the government. Like it's a huge process. You know, it's not a matter of like, oh, I'm gonna have kids, so I'm just gonna pop a few out and then the government's gonna take care of the kids, like how it is in America. Like here, the more kids you have, the more help you get from the government, you know? But in China, like the more kids you have, the more fines you're gonna get. Like, you know, they're gonna, the more penalty, or the bigger the penalty that you're gonna subject to. So I thought that was really interesting. Yeah,
they're like saying it was like 5 to 6 times the annual income, which if you think about it, like say annually you'd get $10,000, like minimum wage, right?
So I think it depends on which area you are, but for a majority of the places, the penalty is that you get a fine, and it's and the fine is the year you get fined the year that your child is born, and as to how much it depends on your annual income, and it ranges from 3 to 6 times your annual income.
Which, if like think about it in the terms of in the U.S., like say you're not earning much, you have a minimum wage job, maybe earning you $10,000 to $20,000 a year.
Yeah.
And suddenly you like are expecting another child. Out of nowhere, you could be expected to pay like $100,000 to $200,000 out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, Who can fulfill that? That's the question.
So that's like more than half of your annual salary that it's like completely gone. And it's not just one parent that has to pay. It's both parents that have to pay.
Yeah, so it's like double that.
So every member of a couple has to pay depending on if you work or not. And it's depending on your individual income, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And in China, like there's really no minimum wage. Like we know as of right now, like a lot of people, there are a lot of documentary on YouTube that you can watch that talks about like the labor, the kind of labor that people have to do in China and stuff like that. And here in America, we're complaining about how minimum wage is like around $10. Freaking in China, they're getting paid like $2 to $3 a day.
Yeah.
And having to work like 8 to 10 hours, they're being paid $2 to $3. You know, that is nothing.
8 to 10, I heard much more.
No.
Like along the lines of 12 to 14 a day.
And it's ridiculous. And then
not to mention your employer is now subsidizing your housing, so they pay you and then you have to pay them back to live.
Exactly. So in the end, you're getting back.
I did an eye roll, by the way.
You're getting back like less than $1 for all that work that you get, that you do. But then there's nothing you can do about it because they're being overpopulated. You know, as of today, still.
Yeah, that's just insane.
So it's really ridiculous.
Well, anyways, as the day ends, we'll rant on China, not because we hate China, but because we care about China and we think China should be a better place. That's what criticism is for. It's to kind of encourage whoever is being criticized to change so that way they can be better. So we'll continue that another day. But it's been 5 days since Impact and we've got a fair amount of parts. Like, we're making good progress. We haven't lost many Pikmin this time around. I didn't go and murder all of them. So, that's good news. And we have 22 parts left. So, let's see how well we'll do in the remaining days. See you next time, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye, Chen-chens. Dimi-chan, 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 Dimi-chan. Linh-chan, Dimi-chan, Dimi-chan, Linh-chan, Dimi-chan, Chan.